I was kind of shocked the other day to find that the ABS actually is removing the ethnicity question from the 2026 census.
Good.
This has basically been criticized by some experts from ANU, saying, look, if you don't actually do this, we might not be able to prevent particular health conditions and plan for the community. Some other commentators have made the point, if you're not doing this, then how will you track how well culturally a society is going? What do you guys think about this? All this, should we be?
Look, I think this is more a bit of a smokescreen amongst the high rates of migration that we're having. That is the number one issue, and unfortunately, there's many people in this country that are saying you can't debate this issue because it's racist. That we can't decide what actually the number and even the ethnic mix should be in this country because you're racist, right? We've had over the last 24 months over 1 million people net. That's net numbers. 1 million net people we've added to our population. I said that is the equivalent of Canberra plus Hobart, plus Launceston, plus Cairns, combined in 24 months. Now, we used to have a migration rate, if we look back between about 1980 and about 2004, of about 100,000 a year. Right? We've had 1 million in 24 months. And in this February, we had 105,000 in the month of February alone, which is more than what we used to have in a year. It is those numbers that are having a catastrophic effect upon Australian society in many ways. Not to mention the raise of the cost of living, with the cost of rents and the cost of housing prices, and the fact that has destroyed the Australian dream for an entire generation. I know when I grew up in kids, one thing didn't matter. As long as you had an average job, you knew you could work hard and you had the opportunity to have a piece of Australia that you could call your own. And that was the great Australian dream. We've killed it.
Yeah.
That is dead today. How does the average price house in Sydney here is something like 1.4 million. How does, and that's the median price. How does a young kid today in school go about and looking at earning enough money to be able to afford the average house? So that changes your aspect of society completely. It changes your psychology, your psychology of society when you're doing that. And that's what we have done. And why are we doing this? Because we are masking over the collapse of the economy with falling real wages and falling GDP per capita. So the way our growth, the government gets growth, is to mask out. Let's keep importing record number of people to give us the economy this sugar hit because we're making a mess of the economy. It is a disaster, and that's the debate that we need to be having.
Yeah. But Tofu, do you agree that it should be removed?
Look, honestly, if you are introducing yourself and leading with either your ethnicity or your sexuality, what you are admitting to people up front is you are an incredibly disinteresting person. Right? The only thing less interesting about you than your ethnicity is your sexuality. And if you have to announce either of those things, forget it. You are not an interesting person. Everything that Craig Kelly said is true. I'm going to add one thing, though. That is that even if it were not for migration, we would still consider ourselves to be in a housing crisis. Right? We've actually manufactured that. That's a homegrown manufactured housing crisis done through restricted land release, incredibly arcane and slow development laws, the incredibly expensive 6-star energy ratings that are required now, and all of this stuff that's added to it. I believe the study was done, it's a bit of an older study now, but I believe a study was done that found that a new build in Sydney, approximately 30 to 35% of the cost was actually the cost of government. And only about 2/3 was actually the cost of doing the work itself. So whilst immigration is making the housing crisis worse, obviously, we would actually still be in what we would consider to be a housing crisis even without it. Yeah. One of my concerns, and I know Craig's not a racist, and I know that Jared Rennick's not a racist, and yeah, these guys are all called racist because they're talking about immigration. I know they're not racists. But one of the things that concerns me is that by stopping immigration and by making the housing crisis all about that, we won't then actually deal with the underlying issue, which is our land release and our planning laws and our industrial relations laws, etc. So I'd love to see, debate immigration if you wish, but let's fix our housing, construction, planning, etc.
The only thing I'd add to that is I saw some data out a couple of weeks ago. And when it comes to building houses, we're one of the best leaders of the world.
Yeah, number one
We
or
are
two,
building,
yeah.
I think we're number 2 in the number of houses we construct per 100,000 people. So yeah, I agree with 100%. The planning laws are ridiculous in bits and pieces we have, and all this red tape is ridiculous, and that is also pushing up the cost of housing. But we've got all these, especially these teals running around going, oh, it's got nothing to do with migration. It's all, if only we just build more houses, the problem will all go away. Yes, we've got to get that red tape off it and construct more houses, absolutely, but the root cause of the problem has been the excessive rates of migration, and it actually started back with John Howard in 2005. That's when it started. We went from 100,000 a year average to about 200 to 250,000 a year, and now Albanese's kicked up to 500,000 a year. That's the problem we need to address in this country.
I'm going to throw it over to you, Natalie, but I just want to quickly bring up the fact that Peter Dutton basically made the point that in his budget reply, we should be reducing immigration by 25%. He doesn't think that, that it should be an issue that is more than that. If 25%, what would that be in terms of reduction?
Not a very high one, really.
Yeah, that's right. Just on those numbers is important, right? We have our migration rate is made up of our permanent migration and our temporary migration, right? He is not talking about the temporary migration. He's only talking about the permanent migration. And the 25% reduction he's talking about is off record levels, right? So it's nothing like the type of reduction that we need in this country, right? And you talk about people being racist. The people that this harms the most are the migrants that have come to this country in the last 10 years. They are the ones that are being hurt the most of any group in this country, right? Because they are the ones that came to this country that would have done their sums about what the cost of living is, what the cost of housing is. They would have done all those sums, and that's why they've elected to come to Australia. They are the group harmed the most by these excessive rates.
You've got a housing crisis, yes, absolutely. You've got a rental crisis where you have between 40 and 50 families turning up to any given apartment, so people can't find a place to live in a dwelling. That's a real issue. And the other thing we don't have for this kind of immigration is we don't have the infrastructure. We don't have the roads. I think Chris Minns has allowed Wallara, or he's decided that Wallara should be really built up. And I don't remember the exact numbers that he wanted to put into the Wallara, but if he's ever been on Old South Head Road, Berriga Road or Bondi Road, he'll never get out of the eastern suburbs. I mean, it's all well and wonderful to say, let's just put something in there and let's put a whole lot of migrants somewhere, but how are you planning on doing this? And okay, maybe we shouldn't be driving cars. Maybe the whole, point is they're trying to push us to no cars at all. I mean, we could probably agree with that's where we're going. But seriously, it's just a disaster. We do have to do something, and 25% is not it.
Yeah. I think something like getting it down below 100K, because we've got to make up for that time. Something more around less than 50K a year. But we also need to be deporting a lot of people. There's a lot of rorts in the immigration system.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of people that are grandfathered in. A lot of immigrants that have been grandfathered in. Like I'm first gen Aussie. My mum was born here, but her parents were recent immigrants. My dad was born overseas, but he came here when he was 4. There's a lot of immigrants, as Craig was saying, 100% totally against this. We're like, hang on, Australia is changing. We came to be Aussie. On Australia Day, we're four-wheel driving on a beach with a barbecue. We're celebrating Australia Day.
Absolutely.
That's how we are. The snag on the barbie, shrimp on the barbie sort of thing. That's changing. Especially it's being spearheaded by the Greens. And a lot of immigrants that, they just come here for the work prospects, understandably, but you got to buy into it all. It's a dream, and you got to preserve it. You got to tend to it. You got to prune it. Yeah, absolutely.
We're such a racist country that Sam Kekovich is an icon of Australia Day, right?
Isn't that
like, that's
funny?
how racist we
Isn't
are.
that funny? Is that the meat guy?
Yeah, the lamb.
The lamb.
Dude, really? Come on.
Lamb. I make you a lamb. Oh, very good. The next story is to do with the coalition.